بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. I ask Allah to grant us the sincere intentions. I bear witness that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wassalam. Thereafter, continuing with the book of An-Nawawi, Riyadh as-Salihin. We were on the 6th hadith. We spoke about the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wassalam, visiting a companion while he was ill. Do you remember the name of this companion? I'm trying not to look at anybody so you don't feel pressure to answer. Say. Sa'ad ibn Abee WaqqaaS, radiyallahu anhu. So the Prophet ﷺ visited him, and he was in a lot of pain. And he said that I have a lot of money and I want to donate it all. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, I want to donate 2/3 of it. So the Prophet ﷺ said, no, don't do that. And then he said that I want to donate half of it. So the Prophet said, La, alayhi salatu wassalam. Then he said, فَالثُّلُث ya Rasulallah, 1/3. I want to give 1/3 of all of my wealth away for the purpose of the da'wah of the Muslims. So the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam said, الثُّلُث وَالثُّلُثُ كَثِيرٌ. He said, okay, 1/3 it is. But know that 1/3 of this money is a lot of money. And then he advised him, and we can take this general advice. He said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, إِنَّكَ إِن تَذَرْ وَرَثَتَكَ أَغْنِيَاءَ خَيْرٌ مِّنْ أَن تَذَرَهُمْ عَالَةً يَتَكَفَّفُونَ النَّاسِ. It is better for you to leave your family in a state in which they are wealthy. It is better for you to leave your family in such a state rather than to leave them in a state in which they would be in need, in which they would need to ask the people. It is better for you to leave them money. Then he said, وَإِنَّكَ لَن تُنْفِقَ نَفَقَةً تَبْتَغِي بِهَا وَجْهَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا أُجِرْتَ عَلَيْهَا حَتَّى مَا تَجْعَلُ فِي امْرَأَتِكَ. He said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and you will not donate any donation for the sake of Allah except that you will be rewarded for it. Even if, he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, even if that donation is, or that voluntary deed, that giving, that spending is by you placing a morsel of food for the sake of Allah in the mouth of your wife. So even that, he said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, is something rewardable. So to go back, he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, what means that you shouldn't be preventing your family members from your inheritance. And for you to leave your inheritors with some money, to leave them in a situation that they can be solvent and not in need, this is a good situation, because this comes under keeping your ties of kinship, silatul rahim, and this comes under being generous also to your family members, and this, it shows that you are compassionate to them also. And also it is better, this is all of what the saying of the Prophet means, alayhi salatu wasalam, it is better for you to give this money, this wealth, to those who are closer to you in terms of relation, family members, than giving this money to someone who is further away from you. So to benefit them. Also what is narrated from the Prophet ﷺ as a benefit for a person's family is what was narrated by Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu. He said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Man qara'a surat al-waqi'ati fi kulli laylatin lam tusibhu faqah." He said, whoever recites Surat al-Waqi'ah every night, the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, such a person would not see need, they would not see poverty in their wealth. So Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, this great companion, and this is Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, he used to advise his daughters to recite this surah every night. And it doesn't take long, perhaps 6 or 7 minutes, like Surah Al-Mulk. Perhaps 6 or 7 minutes it takes. So a person, if they want to come under those that implement this hadith, first they learn how to recite this surah with somebody who has learned all the way back to Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. And they make sure that they are articulating the letters properly. Otherwise, if they are not articulating the letters properly, then they will not be rewarded. Some people, they have this misconception. They think that if a person tries harder to recite the Quran, if it's more challenging for them to recite the Quran, and then in the end they, while trying to recite it, still recite it wrong, some people think that this person has 2 rewards or double the amount of reward. And this is not true. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Man qara'a al-Qur'ana wa huwa fihi yuta'ti'." Whoever recites the Quran and he has a ta'ta'ah, which is that it's challenging for him to recite it. He can't get, it's difficult for him. He finds it challenging to get the letters out. Such a person, if they eventually, after rising to the challenge and putting in the effort, and then they end up saying it right, so not wrong, they actually say it right, after all that effort, then they get 2 rewards. The Prophet said, فَلَهُ أَجْرَانِ مَنْ قَرَأَ الْقُرْآنَ وَهُوَ فِيهِ يُتَعْتِعْ فَلَهُ أَجْرَانِ. He didn't say, the one that recites the Quran and he finds it challenging and he recites it wrong, then he still gets reward. He didn't say that, alayhi salatu wassalam. Sometimes you see people on social media, there might be people who have embraced al-Islam and they try to recite the Quran. They make a video of themselves trying to recite the Quran, and they have a good intention to recite the Quran, but they are focusing more on the rhythm and the melody, the way it sounds. And they are not articulating some letters. They're deleting some letters completely. Or some letters, they're not reciting them properly. This person for reciting the Quran wrong, they don't get any reward. No one is saying that they're not trying hard. No one is saying that. Yes, they're trying hard. No one is being, one might say, cruel to them and picking on them because this is not their first language and so on. Rather, we go by what Allah revealed in the Quran. Those people who are rewarded for reciting the Quran are the ones that يَتْلُونَهُ حَقَّ تِلَاوَتِهِ. They recite it properly. So if someone recites the Quran wrong, and you know that they're reciting it wrong, you're not allowed to stay quiet about it. Someone's reciting the Quran wrong, even if they have just embraced al-Islam, and they try to recite the Quran but they recite it wrong, we're not allowed to applaud this person and say, well done, because they recited it wrong. Rather we say, yeah, mashallah, you tried, we'll keep practicing. Likewise, on social media, there are some people like this, a lot of people like this. So in this situation, a person shouldn't like the post or commend that person or applaud that person because the recitation is wrong. Now, the ignorant people, a lot of people, the ignorant people, if you say something like that about someone, they'll say, oh, look, why are you always being so negative? Why, look, this person is trying this. Yeah, no one said this person's not trying. And as Muslims, we appreciate that a person would try to recite the Quran, but don't at the same time stand on the other side and say, well done, while they're reciting it wrong. Either because that person themselves thinks that that person is reciting it correctly, which is, twice as dangerous now. It's more problematic. Or they know that this person is not reciting correctly, but they just let that emotion overcome them. We don't encourage a person to keep doing something wrong. We say to them, keep learning. Come, even I'll teach you. So this is a big misconception that some people have. And this calls towards ignorance. They say, oh, whoever feels that reciting the Quran for them is challenging, then they might say, in whatever way they recite it, they get rewarded. False. This is calling towards ignorance. Why would anybody on the face of the earth then want to learn the rules of tajweed? If you can just recite it however you want, and your intention is enough, and you recite it wrong, who would want to recite it? Nobody. Nobody would put the effort in. Very few people even would put the effort in to try to recite it properly. What would be the merit of the person who recites it correctly over the one that doesn't recite it correctly? Are they both not putting in effort? Didn't this person put effort in to learn, as the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wassalam? What would have been the point of the Prophet saying, alayhi salatu wassalam, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ? The best of you are those that learned the Quran, learned how to recite it, and then taught it. What would be the point of the Prophet having said that if anybody could just come and recite it the way they want and get rewarded? It doesn't make sense. So nowadays, because of the mass ignorance in some people, and because they build the religious judgments not on the rules of the religion but on emotions, that they say things like this. So one is not allowed to encourage a person who you know that they are reciting the Quran wrong. You're not allowed to applaud them and say to them, oh, well done, that's really good. And say, well, you tried. No, you say to the person, you recited it wrong. Let me help you. Let me fix a few things. Look, you tried hard. And I appreciate that you tried hard, but there are a few things that are wrong. Like the person that says, صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ. This is wrong. Someone recites, and they intend that it's part of the Quran, and they say, صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ. They're sinful. Haram. They say, صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ. They've committed a sin. They say it again. In the second rak'ah, they say, صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ. Haram. Again. Someone might say, how can it be haram when it's the Quran? Well, easy. It's not the Quran. Allazina with zai is not Quran, it's alladhina. Someone who recites Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdu, they're not reciting Quran. They're reciting something that they think is the Quran. And then some people will say, well, look, at least we're trying. Or one of the biggest excuses is, we're not Arabs. Okay, Abu Hanifa wasn't an Arab. Sibawayh, Imam al-Nahu, the father of grammar, he was not an Arab, he was a Persian. And like that, many scholars, they were Persian. They were not Arabs. But they all recited the Quran properly. They took the time out. They were bothered enough to learn what the Prophet said, and they were bothered enough to implement what the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, to get the reward. So here's little old this person coming along and saying, well, I'm trying and I'm still getting... How are you getting reward? It doesn't make sense. So people, they try to focus on the emotional side, and this is the downfall for many people. Anyway, the Prophet ﷺ said to him, إِنَّكَ لَتُنْفِقُ نَفَقَةً تَبْتَغِي بِهَا وَجْهَ اللَّهِ. If you donate, he said to Sa'ad ibn Abee WaqqaaS, if you donate, and by this donation, تَبْتَغِي, you intend, وَجْهَ اللَّهِ, you intend for the sake of Allah, then you will be rewarded. Now the word wajh in the Arabic language has many meanings. Some people, they claim, falsely, that when it says the word wajh about Allah in the Quran, that you have to take its most apparent meaning. This is what they say. It is true that the most apparent meaning of al-wajh in the Quran, or rather, the most apparent meaning of wajh in the Arabic language is face. Face. It's the most apparent meaning. There are many other meanings, but one of the most apparent is when someone usually says wajh, it usually means face. But in this context, when it says wajh Allah, one is not allowed to translate it as the face, supposedly, the face of Allah. Because Allah is laysa kamithlihi shay. Allah Ta'ala is not like the creation. Some of these people, and they are namely the Wahhabiyah, especially those that are the English speaking ones, they will say that we say the face of Allah. They'll say you have to take it literally. You've got to say the face of Allah. Wal-'iyadhu billah. What is a literal face? Something that has a side. Something that has a shape and a size. So they will say you have to take it literally, but then they'll say, oh, but laysa kamithlihi shay, which is just pulling the wool over a person's eyes. It's a trick. How can they say you have to take it literally, which means it must be like the creation? And then they say, well, wait a second, it's not like the creation. How can it be absolutely literally like the creation, but then not like the creation? It's a contradiction. So when it says wajh Allah, do it liwajhillah, it's not to be translated as do it for the supposed face of Allah. Attributing face to Allah, i.e. a literal face, this is kufr. A face necessitates a shape and a size. Just as attributing a place to Allah, a physical place to Allah, just by somebody saying Allah is in the sky, just by a person saying this kufr statement that Allah is in the sky, we can accuse this person, we can and we do, we charge this person with attributing to Allah weakness, a shape and a size and limits, just by that. Even though they didn't say Allah has a size, they didn't say Allah has a limit, they didn't say Allah has a volume, they didn't say any of that. They said Allah is in the sky, and they do this. by just saying Allah is in the sky, and they mean a physical place, then we charge them with accusing Allah of having a shape and a size, because this matter, saying Allah is above in a place, necessitates that Allah would supposedly be a shape and a size. You can't have something that is in a physical place but is not a shape and a size. The example I usually give is, if I said to you, yesterday I touched the Kaaba, and you say, oh, the real Kaaba? And I say, yes, I touched the Kaaba, the actual Kaaba, not not like a replica. I touched the Kaaba that Ibrahim alayhi salam built. I touched it with these hands, this hand. And then you would conclude that I was in Al-Hijaz, I was in Mecca, I was in Al-Masjid Al-Haram. So then imagine you went to somebody and you told them, oh, do you know Irfan? He was in Mecca yesterday. And if that reached me and I said, whoa, what are you doing? I never told you I was in Al-Masjid Al-Haram. I never told you I was in Mecca. I never even told you I was in Al-Hijaz. How dare you say about me that just because I said I touched the actual Kaaba, how dare you assume all those things? You say to me, are you feeling all right? If you told us you touched the Kaaba, that obviously, necessarily, it means that you were in, because the Kaaba isn't in Baghdad, the Kaaba isn't in Oslo, Norway. It's not in Luxembourg. It's not in the North Pole. Where is the Kaaba? It's in Mecca. Where is the Kaaba? In Al-Masjid Al-Haram. So, by you going to that other person and saying that Irfan was in Al-Masjid Al-Haram, he was in Mecca, you haven't lied. And that's okay for you to do that. So, because this matter necessitates that one. So, if a person, like another example, if a person says, yesterday I was at the Eiffel Tower, can you assume that I was in Paris? Of course you can. Someone says, no, I never said that. You can't pin that on me. You can't say I was in Paris because I never said I was. Come on. You had to have been. How could you not be? So if you said about me that I was in Paris, even though I didn't say that I was in Paris, you have a right to do that. And you would not be considered to be lying. So a person who says, Allah is in the sky, and they do this. They say Allah is in the sky. They say He's above the arsh. Automatically, they are saying, even if they say, oh, I never said that, we can accuse them of saying of saying that you say Allah is a shape. Because everything that is in a place has a shape. Everything. Everything that is in a place has a size. There's a distance between me and it. If they say Allah is in the sky, then this thing that they call Allah, there is a distance between me and it. If I go, let's say, if I was on a mountain, then I went into a valley, then there'd be more of a distance between me and this thing. So if somebody says Allah is in the sky physically, and they say He's above the arsh, and to emphasize that, they might even point and say He's above, then immediately the Muslims call this person a kafir. Why? Because it's absolutely necessary. It necessitates being in the sky, necessitates being in a place, having a shape and a size. And this is what this person will be attributing to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Even if they say, no, I never said Allah has a size. I never said Allah has a shape. And so on. Similarly, if a person says Allah has a literal face, then here we would judge them as a non-Muslim if they understand the meaning of literal face. We judge them as a kafir. Why? Because face necessitates shape and size, which is weakness. Shapes, all the shapes are formed by Allah. Allah created them. Everything was given a size by Allah. Allah revealed, وَكُلُّ شَيْءٍ عِنْدَهُ بِمِقْدَارٍ. Everything has a miqdar. Allah gave it a size and a shape and a volume, a quantity, an amount. Allah gave it that. That's why everything is in need of Allah. So, we cannot use the word wajh in the Arabic language to mean, in English, to mean face. Rather, when it comes to Allah, rather when it's said, as the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, if you donate, and by this donation, أَنْتَ تَبْتَغِي بِهَا وَجْهَ اللَّهِ, you intend the wajh of Allah, it means you intend for the sake of Allah. Like when we say, fi sabilillah. Fi sabilillah. Literally, if someone says, it means in the path of Allah. It doesn't mean, we don't take it literally and say, well, this is a path, that Allah is this thing that, He walks on it. We don't say that, do we? Likewise, when we say other things. So, wajh Allah, it means the self of Allah. It means for the sake of Allah, tabaraka wa ta'ala. And this is what the Wahhabiyya do. When they speak in the Arabic language, they say that Allah, and they use the term in Arabic that's in the Quran. So a lot of the time in Arabic they get away with it. The so-called Salafis. They get away with it because they'll just say something like, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa. And we'll say, yes, okay, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa. But it's when the English-speaking ones put it into English and they give it a literal meaning, then we see what they intend. They'll say, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa means Allah rose above the arsh, giving Allah a place, a shape and a size, dimensions and distance between all the creation and between Allah. Or they'll say, for example, about Allah Ta'ala, that Allah supposedly revealed, إِذَا جَاءَنِي عَبْدِي شِبْرًا جِئْتُهُ ذِرَاعًا وَإِذَا جَاءَنِي يَمْشِي جِئْتُهُ هَرْوَلًا. They'll translate this hadith literally, and they'll say supposedly that Allah revealed that if my slave walks towards me, I will jog towards him. They say that. So they'll say, but this jogging is لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. They'll say it's literal jogging, but it's not like the jogging that we know. Rubbish. How can that be? Like you say, this is water, but it's nothing like the water that we know. The water we know has a shape and a size and a taste and so on. How can you have water that's not water? It doesn't make sense. So this is a trick that these people have played for a long time. In the time of Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhu, a man came asking about these types of ayahs. And he was insinuating that they have this meaning, that is a kufr meaning. So Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhu, he said to him, I know your cure. I know what your cure is. So he took off his belt and he struck him in the head. And then, because Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhu, he was a pious person, and even his hit was blessed. That man, his name, I won't mention his name, he said that, Ya Umar, you have cured me. You have cured me from what I was feeling. I don't feel like I need to go through those ayahs to try to insinuate a meaning now. And like this, these people have been for hundreds of years following the path of the anthropomorphists, those that liken Allah to the creation. So if ever you see something like this, where a body part is attributed to Allah, even if someone says, oh, but it's in the Quran, tell them, this is a literal translation of something that's in the Quran. Who did this literal translation? Was it Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam? No. Was it Jibreel? No, alayhi salam. Who was it? Perhaps some person, it's obvious, it was some person who follows the creed of the Wahhabiyya or the so-called Salafiyya as they identify. They've given themselves different names to make it seem like that they are the people of truth. They even call themselves Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So let's not be naive. There was a person, subhanallah, living in this town. He said that I had heard that people were warning against the Wahhabis. And this is an example of someone who is naive. He said, I heard that people were warning against the Wahhabis in this town and the so-called Salafis. So I went to Mecca. And I saw one of the big Imams, one of the big Wahhabis, Shayateen. I saw one of the big Wahhabis there. And I said to him something along the lines of, people say you're Wahhabis. are you Wahhabis or are you Sunnis? They say, what's the saying in Punjabi, that jitna saman dakana chahe wohi bikna, meaning that whatever merchandise you have, that's what's going to sell. This person, he was naive. He asked this person, he said to this Wahhabi, people say you're Wahhabis, but I want to ask you, and they say you're not Sunnis, so what are you? So this shaitan, he said, no, we are Sunnis. We are Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So this person then, thinking all victorious and glorious, he came home, he came back to this town and he started telling people, I asked them myself, and they said, we are Sunnis. What does that mean? What does that mean? Neither did a person debate with them on an issue or argue with them or clarify any of these details, but just that they said we are Sunnis. They call themselves sometimes Ahlul Sunnah. They call themselves the Salafi movement. They call themselves Ahlul Hadeeth. One thing they don't call themselves is Wahhabis. They consider this a derogatory term. But this is after their leader, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. Anyway, subhanallah. So if ever you see, like this, a translation of the Quran, you look out for certain verses. They might say things like, Allah rose above the throne. Wal-'ayadhu billah. Or Allah established Himself on the throne. What they mean by that is that He sat. Or they might say that the countenance of Allah remains. What they mean by that is face. They just don't want to use the word face. But they use a big word that other people don't know means face. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. So beware. Beware. They take these hadiths literally. And this is not the way of Ahlul Sunnah, the actual Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Like if someone was to ask, we wouldn't, but hypothetically if somebody asked a Qadiani, so people say that you people are non-Muslims. Are you non-Muslims or are you kuffar? What do you think he's going to say? Is he going to say, no, we are kuffar? Qadiani, Mirzai, they're going to say, no, we are actually kuffar. No, they're going to say, we are Muslims, of course. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. This is an example of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said there would be a ruwaybidah, a despicable type of person that would appear and he would be popular and then he would speak about the matters of the religion to the lay people like us. He will speak to us and preach certain things that he doesn't have any understanding about. So the Prophet ﷺ said, "Hatta ma taj'alu fi fimra'atik." Even what you place for the sake of Allah, the morsel of food that you literally place in your wife's mouth, you feed her. Might be one for the sake of Allah. Even this, if it's for the sake of Allah, then you will be rewarded for it. Again, this goes back to intending for the sake of Allah. Whether it's clothing that you provide somebody with, or you help them, or you yourself eat something or drink something that is halal, and you intend for the sake of Allah, then a person will be rewarded for this. The Prophet ﷺ, he said in a hadith, "Al-yadu al-ulya khayrun min al-yadi sufla," which means that the hand that is giving is better than the hand that is receiving. This is talking about when someone is poor. It's permissible for them to beg. And that hand is the lower hand. It's permissible for them to beg. But what is better is for someone to give for the sake of Allah. وَابْدَأْ بِمَنْ تَعُولُ, meaning, give first to those people who are your dependents. Going back to the hadith. Give first to those who are your dependents. If you have people, your family members, whether in this country or another country, that are in need of a zakah, or they are in need of you to keep obligatory ties with them, which is fulfilled with finances if they are poor, then give to them first. give to them first. If they have been satisfied and you still want to give, yes, then give to those that are not family members. Family members include your siblings, your first cousins and your second cousins, and some scholars said even beyond that. Some scholars said إِلَى الْأَبِ الرَّابِعِ, up to your fourth father. So your father, his father who is your grandfather, his father who is your, and his father who is your great-great-grandfather. And then that great-great-grandfather's siblings and everybody who was born to those siblings, and like this. These are your family members, some scholars said. So look for these people first before giving to others. He said, وَابْدَأْ بِمَنْ تَعُولُ. Those people who are your عائلة, meaning they are dependent upon you, give to them first. So then this companion said, O Messenger of Allah, will I die here in Mecca? Remember, he didn't want to die in Mecca. Why? Why did he want to die in Mecca? Do you remember? And? Correct, but and? Can you elaborate? Yeah, he wanted to be considered among those people who fought for the sake of Allah, who obeyed the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam by going to Al-Madinah. And it was tough migrating. They had to leave everything. So they didn't want to go back to that. Okay? So he said, will I die here, O Messenger of Allah? He said, إِنَّكَ لَن تُخَلِّفْ. He said, you will not die here, rather you will have a long life. فَتَعْمَلُ عَمَلًا تَبْتَغِي بِهِ وَجْهَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا ازْدَدْتَ بِهِ دَرَجَةً وَرِفْعَةً. That you will benefit many people. Do not worry, you will benefit many people. Once a man came to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, a Bedouin man from the desert, a Muslim. And he said, Ya Rasulallah, man khayrun nas? O Messenger of Allah, who is the best of people? Who is among the best of people? He said, Sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Man tala umuruhu wa hasuna amaluhu. He said, Man tala umuruhu wa hasuna amaluhu. Let's memorize that. Say, Man tala umuruhu wa hasuna amaluhu. Man tala umuruhu wa hasuna amaluhu. Wa hasuna amaluhu. He was asked, Ya Rasulallah, man khayrun nas? Who is the best among the best of people? So he said, Sallallahu alayhi wasallam, we'll do it after 3, inshallah. Let's see if you remember it. Khayr, inshallah. Make your intention for the sake of Allah. Saying words that the Messenger of Allah said, Sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Ya Jama'a, in Ramadan. Come on, yani, mashallah. Okay? So, قال رجل قال أعرابي للرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يا رسول الله من خير الناس? Who is the best of people? So the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said, من ما شاء الله من طال عمره, العمر age, right? I'm giving you bits and then inshallah we'll do the whole meaning. من طال عمره وحسن عمله. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, among the best of people, man or woman, is the one who had an umr, an age that was long. طال عمره. But not just that. Some people, some wicked folk, some sinister, evil, wretched people live until 130. وَلَيْسَ لَهُمْ إِلَّا النَّارِ. And these people might not have except the fire of hell. but they lived what they might consider a full life, where they exhausted all of the pleasures, all of the worldly pleasures, all of the sinful pleasures. But on the Day of Judgment, they will have nothing except sins. So it's not just having a long life. He said, alayhi salatu wassalam, man tala umuruhu, the one that has a long life, wa hasuna amaluhu, and he has good deeds. The one whose life is full of good deeds. And again, you know the routine. How do you get good deeds? By learning the religious knowledge, then doing the good deeds. That's how you get good deeds. That step of learning, it's always there. You have to learn. Even it's sunnah for someone to say to another, Atala Allahu umurak. May Allah grant you a long life. You say to a Muslim, Atala Allahu umuraka. It's sunnah to say to a Muslim, may Allah grant you a long life. Now for what? Just to you make that dua for a person just so that they can stay away from death for a longer time? Even though a person's lifespan is set, of course. Okay. Why does a person make dua for a person to have a long life? Why? I thought about this once. And I thought, I wonder, why do people say that? May Allah grant you a long life. Why? Because they're going to miss them if they die? Okay, yeah, reasonable. They're going to miss them if they die, so they want them to have a long life. Why else would they want them to have a long life? So that they can see their grandchildren, and then see their grandchildren get married. Okay. Why else might they say, oh, I ask Allah to grant you a long life? Because it's just a norm to say. It's respectful to say that. Because, I don't want to say, may Allah grant you death. Just by the way of opposite. May Allah put you to rest. May Allah, right? Why? Why does a person say, may Allah grant you a long life? It's so... And then one of my teachers said, it's because, this is true, it's because you're making dua for them to have a long life so that they can fill it with good deeds. That's why. So that you can make more dhikr, help more people, donate more, so that your deeds, the good deeds increase and increase. And if there were things that were haram that a person had done, so like that rope that has those knots in it, and the knots represent sins, so that a person can learn in the future what these sins were, so that they can unravel them, unlock those knots, open those knots up, so that they can die as a Muslim that repented from all of their sins. This is why you say, Atala Allahu umuraka. May Allah grant you a long life. So when he was asked, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Man khayrun nas? He answered, after 3, 2, 1. جيد. من طال عمره وحسن عمله. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, to Sa'ad, don't worry. What means don't worry. You will live after this. And you will benefit a lot of people, a lot of Muslims. And that happened. He went to Persia and fought in the battles. And the Muslims conquered those lands. The Prophet said, حَتَّى يَنْتَفِعَ بِكَ أَقْوَامٌ وَيُضَرَّ بِكَ آخَرُونَ. Some people will benefit from you greatly and others will be harmed by you. Who will be harmed by him? The enemy. They'll be harmed by him. And he lived until the Muslims conquered Al-Iraq and many other lands. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, Allahumma. Allahumma, if you look at it, alif, lam, ha. What does that spell? Alif, lam, ha. Yeah, with an alif in the middle. Allah. Then you have a meme on the end. Meme mushaddada. Allahumma. That's Allahumma. It means, oh Allah. That's what it means. Allahumma. أمضي لأصحابي هجرتهم وَلَا تَرُدَّهُمْ عَلَىٰ أَعْقَابِهِمْ. Which means, Ya Allah, complete or fulfill. I ask you to fulfill for my companions their hijrah by not making them die in the place where they migrated from. Do you know how many companions are in Al-Baqi'? Do you know? 10,000. 10,000 of the people who fought alongside the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's why Al-Baqi' is so special. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, "Man istata'a minkum an yamuta bil Madina falyamut." Whoever among you is able to die in Al-Madinah, do it. Why? He said, because I will intercede. I will intercede for the people of Al-Baqi'. Some people left Al-Madinah once. Some of the companions, it's really hot in Al-Madinah, burning hot sometimes. Some of them left Al-Madinah, and the Prophet ﷺ said about them, Al-Madinatu khayrun lahum law kanu ya'lamun. Al-Madinah is better for them only if they knew. He said ﷺ, he promised great things for those that are patient with the scorching heat of Al-Madinah and then the storms and the cold winds of Al-Madinah. It gets very cold there as well. So he made dua that his companions would not go back. Those that came to Al-Madinah would not come back. There was another companion called Sa'd ibn Khawlah. This companion, we said yesterday, he migrated from Mecca to Al-Madinah, but then he died in Mecca. So the Prophet ﷺ spoke about him. In another narration, the Prophet ﷺ said to Sa'd, when Sa'd said to him, "I'm ill, O Messenger of Allah, خشيت أن أموت بالأرض التي هاجرت منها كما مات سعد بن خولة فادعوا الله أن يشفيني." He said that, O Messenger of Allah, I fear that I may die in Mecca. Remember, this was after the farewell Hajj. He said, I fear that I may die in Mecca, in the place that I migrated from, just like Sa'd, the other Sa'd ibn Khawla did. He migrated from Mecca to Al-Madinah and then he died in Mecca. So the Prophet ﷺ said, and now you know why he was cured as well. The Prophet ﷺ said, Allahumma shfi Sa'dan, Allahumma shfi Sa'dan, Allahumma shfi Sa'dan. The Prophet ﷺ made dua for him 3 times. Oh Allah, cure Sa'd. Oh Allah, cure Sa'd. Oh Allah, cure Sa'd. And by this, we come to the end of the 6th hadith. We'll start with the 7th hadith, but we won't complete it, inshaAllah. عن أبي هريرة عبد الرحمن بن صخر رضي الله عنه قال أنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله لا ينظر إلى أجسامكم ولا إلى صوركم ولكن ينظر إلى قلوبكم. رواه Muslim. This hadith was narrated by Abu Hurayrah radiyallahu anhu. And insha'Allah ta'ala, let's mention something about Abu Hurayrah. Abu Hurayrah radiyallahu anhu said, I was raised, I grew up as an orphan. And I left Mecca as a miskin. And he said that I used to work for one of the people. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, he spent 3 years with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Just 3 years. And he was very poor. One of the companions said that Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu was very, very poor. But later on in his life, and you'll see how poor he was. Later on in his life, he was wearing a shirt, a piece of clothing, a garment made of linen. And it was striped. It had red stripes in it. He said Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu wiped his nose with this garment of linen. And after doing so, Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu said, Bakhin bakh. You've got to memorize this word, Arabic word. Bakhin bakh. So when something good happens, you say Bakhin bakh. What do you say? It's Ramadan. Bakhin bakh, ya salam. Okay? Bakhin bakh. He said, Bakhin bakh. Yatamakhatu Abu Hurairah fil kattan. He said, Bakhin bakh. Look at Abu Hurairah, talking about himself. Look at Abu Hurairah, wiping his nose with, it's his own clothing, so it's fine. He said, wiping his nose rather, with a piece of linen, with clothing made of linen. He said, لَقَدْ رَأَيْتُ لَقَدْ رَأَيْتُنِي بَيْنَ مِنْبَرِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ وَحُجْرَةِ عَائِشَةِ. He said, I remember myself when I would stay between the chamber of Lady Aisha, where the Prophet is buried, alayhi salatu wasalam, while he was alive. So I used to stay between the chamber of Lady Aisha and the mimbar of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. I remember this time, coincidentally, what's that called, that area? Riyadul Jannah, the Rawdah, right? That part that will be lifted to paradise. He said that I remember myself between Al-Hujra, Hujrati Sayyidatina Aisha wa Minbari Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So imagine that nonchalantly, he'd just be there. Nowadays, you need to queue up, especially after COVID, you need to queue up and download an app and subhanallah. And you can spend 5 minutes. You say Allahu Akbar and they start saying Yalla, 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 Yalla Hajj. Go. They try to get rid of you. He said, I was there. يَجِيءُ الْجَائِي يَرَى أَنَّ بِي جُنُونًا وَمَا بِي إِلَّا الْجُوعِ. He said, people would pass by me while I was in the masjid. They would pass by me and they would say, oh, he's crazy. Because Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu would, imagine when you're hungry, really hungry, because he was really hungry, he would pass out because he was hungry. And then he would come to. He would look around and he would pass out. He would come to. So he said, people would think that I was insane. They just thought, that's Abu Hurairah, that's the insane one. He comes and goes. He's lost his mind, poor thing. He said, but I wasn't insane. There was nothing wrong with me except that I was hungry. But look at where I was. And look now, Allah bestowed upon me that I can wear this shirt made of linen. Yeah, a bit like cotton, isn't it? Oh, what is linen? Linen cotton. He said that now I can even blow my nose in it, and it's mine. Bakhin bakh. He said, the children of Al-Madinah, when I used to pass out, they used to play, they used to come and kick me. They would kick me. I'd be on the floor, and I was starving, and they'd kick me. And he said on one occasion that Sayyiduna Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu came, and he said, Assalamu alaikum. So he said, I said, Wa alaikum assalam. Thinking that, because he was poor, so he had a right to beg. He said, Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. And Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu passed by. Then he said, Sayyiduna Umar came. And Sayyiduna Umar said, Assalamu alaikum ya Abu Hurairah. So he said, Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Some people who are poor, they don't like to ask. They don't like to ask. They would rather that someone understands that they are in need. So he said, Sayyiduna Umar radiyallahu anhu passed by. And he went. So he said, then the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam came. And he said, Ya Aba Hir, Abu Hurairah. Abu Hurairah is a shortened term for when someone's beloved. So you shorten. Remember we said about Lady Aisha, what would the Prophet call her sometimes? Alayhi salatu wasalam. Ya Aish. Ya Aish. So he said to him, Ya Abu Hurairah. He said, Labbayka ya Rasulullah. He said, come with me. He said, are you hungry? He said, Naam ya Rasulullah. I'm hungry. Yes. So he went with him. So the Prophet ﷺ went into one of the chambers of one of his wives, and they had some milk that somebody had given them. So the Prophet ﷺ showed Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu that we have milk. So Abu Hurairah. So the Prophet ﷺ said, go and call some of the people of Sufa. Ahlul Sufa were the poor people that were homeless, and they lived in a part what is now the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. So he went to call the people of Sufa, and they came, and he said, Ya Abu Hurairah. He said, Labbayka ya Rasulullah. Like, is it time to drink? He said, let 10 of them in. So he let 10 of them in, and they drank their fill. And then he said, Ya Abu Hurairah. He said, Labbayka ya Rasulullah. He said, let 10 more in, Abu Hurairah. So like this, the Prophet ﷺ kept inviting 10, until all the people of Ahlul Sufa, perhaps there were 64 or more, all of them had drank. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, Ya Abu Hurairah. He said, Labbayka ya Rasulallah. He said, Ishrab ya Abu Hurairah. Drink. He said, I drank and I drank. This was a miracle for the Prophet ﷺ. He said, I drank and I drank and I drank, until the Prophet kept saying, Ishrab ya Abu Hurairah. Ishrab, drink Abu Hurairah, drink Abu Hurairah, drink Abu Hurairah, until he said, the Prophet ﷺ said, Ishrab ya Abu Hurairah, drink Abu Hurairah. He said, Ya Rasulullah, wallahi ma ajidu lahu maslakan. I can't find a way, I can't find like a path for it. There's no way, there's nothing. It's like up to here. Ma ajid, wallahi ya Rasulullah, ma ajidu lahu maslakan. So then the Prophet ﷺ took it, and remember, all the people of Ahlul Sufa drank from it. Abu Hurairah drank from it, from the same place. So the humbleness of the Prophet ﷺ shows you that he took it from the place that they drank. Before drinking, he said, I am the last of those that will drink from this milk, just as I am the last of the prophets. He said, Bismillah, and then he drank. In that, there is another proof that if a person drinks from a glass of water, they drink from here, then it's not the best of manners to, if they drink from there, it's not the best of manners for you if they give you this and then you realize they drank from there, then you turn it this way to make sure that you don't drink from where they drank. And some people do that because they've learned the manners, call them manners if you will, from the West. Where the people in the West, in these countries, the non-Muslims of these countries, they might consider that to be disgusting. How would you drink from the same place that someone else is drinking? So some people think that they are doing good by you, and they show you that you drank from that, and they show you, they go like this. They actually show you that I'm not drinking from the same place you drank. Or a person will drink, some people will drink and they'll do this, and they'll purposefully show you, like, look, I drank from here, so there you go. That's not the manners of the Prophet ﷺ. He deliberately would drink from the place where other people drank from, to show you that this moisture, it's considered negligible, as they say. It's just a trace. It doesn't have an effect. It's not considered disgusting. Just like if you were to wet your finger like that, right? That's not considered disgusting for that moisture to be on your finger. So we learn our manners from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To finish, Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu said, he once said, by Allah, Wallahi, la yasma'u bi mu'minun wa la mu'minatun illa ahabbani. He said, O people, by Allah, no Muslim man or woman will ever hear about me except that they will love me. So the people that were listening to him said, what do you mean? They said to him, وَمَا يُعَلِّمُكَ ذَلِكَ? How do you know that? What makes you think that at least? He said, إِنِّي كُنْتُ أَدْعُو أُمِّي إِلَى الْإِسْلَامِ فَتَأْبَى عَلَيَّ. I used to call my mom to embrace Islam. Mom, embrace Islam. Embrace Islam, embrace Islam. But she would deny. Each time she would say no. He said, so I called her one day to Al-Islam. فَأَسْمَعَتْنِي فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ مَا أَكْرَهُ. When I called her to Al-Islam, she mentioned the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a way that I don't like. She said something really bad about the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. He said, فَجِئْتُ. Where do you go if you have a problem? And you're in Al-Madinah and the Prophet is alive. Where do you go? He went to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. He said, فَجِئْتُ إِلَىٰ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ وَأَنَا أَبْكِي. And he said, I went to him while I was crying. And this would hurt the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. That his companions would be sad, this would sadden him. He said, Ya Rasulallah, إني كنت أدعو أبي هريرة إلى الإسلام فتأبى علي. I would call the mother of Abu Hurairah, speaking about himself, to Al-Islam, but she would reject. وَإِنِّي دَعَوْتُهَا الْيَوْمَ. And even today, I requested, I told her to embrace Al-Islam, and then she mentioned you in a way that I did not like at all. فَادْعُ اللَّهَ أَنْ يَهْدِيَ أَبِي هُرَيْرَةَ إِلَى الْإِسْلَامِ. So Ya Rasulullah, make dua that Allah guides her to Al-Islam. So he said, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam made dua for me. He said, then I went home and I saw that the door of the house was slightly open. And inside I could hear water falling as though someone's washing something. So I went inside and I saw that my mum, she was covered like the Muslim women were covered. And she said, Udkhul ya Abu Hurairah, come in Abu Hurairah. So he said, I went in, and she said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. She embraced Islam. He said, so I ran. I ran to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And I was crying again. I was crying from joy, tears of joy. He said, just as I had cried out of sadness, and I said, Abshir ya Rasulallah, be glad tidings, O Messenger of Allah. فَقَدْ أَجَابَ اللَّهُ دَعْوَتَكَ. Indeed, Allah answered your prayer. قَدْ هَدَى اللَّهُ أَبِي هُرَيْرَةَ إِلَى الْإِسْلَامِ. Indeed, Allah guided Abi Hurairah, the mother of Abu Hurairah, my mother, to Al-Islam. Then Abu Hurairah said, then I said to the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wassalam, Ya Rasulallah, ud'u Allah an yuhabbibani wa ummi ila al-mu'minina wal-mu'minat wa ila kulli mu'minin wa mu'mina. He said, then I asked the Prophet, Ya Rasulallah, O Messenger of Allah, ask Allah to make me and my mom. He didn't marry. He didn't have anybody else. He said, Ya Rasulullah, ask Allah, make dua that Allah makes me and my mom beloved to all the Muslims. لِلْمُسْلِمِينَ وَالْمُسْلِمَاتِ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ. And to every mu'min and every Muslim, ask Allah to make me and my mother beloved to them. So the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, Allahumma habbib ubaydaka hadha. Ubayd, when you say abad, a beloved form of that is to say Ubayd, like Ubaydullah, Abdullah, Ubaydullah. And it has other, there are other reasons why a person might use that. But he said, Allahumma habbib ubaydaka hadha wa ummahu ila kulli mu'minin wa mu'minatin. Oh Allah, make this slave of yours, this person who is beloved to me, make this slave of yours and his mother beloved to every Muslim man and every Muslim woman. he said, Abu Hurairah said, فَلَيْسَ يَسْمَعُ بِي. So nobody hears about me, no Muslim or man or woman, except that they love me. In another narration, Abu Hurairah mentioned that people, if they make dua for Abu Hurairah because of all the hadiths that he narrated, then he asked that they also make dua for his mother. So imagine how his mother, the status that she gained. Until this day, people narrate this hadith about the mother of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, he acquired a lot of religious knowledge. We'll talk about this tomorrow, inshaAllah ta'ala. Let's stop here. Let's say La ilaha illallah and as-salah ala nabi. La ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Let's quickly recite Al-Fatiha for the sake of Allah and send the reward to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, to Shaykh Abdullah, and ask Allah to relieve the Muslims of the hardships that they are going through currently in Palestine. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah. بارك الله بكم.